everyone, so this is going to be a short little video just looking at one small aspect of EA Respawn's game Apex Legends. Now I love Apex, it's a game which I've been playing for about a year now and still kinda suck at. I think Respawn though did an amazing job creating a fantastically fast-paced and fluid FPS, with Apex's movement and gunplay being perfectly suited to the open and chaotic battle royale genre. Apex is also 100% a genuine free-to-play game, where all the microtransactions are purely cosmetic, and where the player who doesn't spend a penny can be just as competitive as the player who has spent thousands. The only tiny exception to this being, at least to my knowledge, is one single weapon which has a legendary skin whose version of the integrated iron sight is very slightly better than the one on all the basic skins. But I'm honestly not even convinced this was done in any way intentionally. I think it was probably just an aesthetic change that wasn't picked up on in playtesting. While all of this is great, one thing I personally don't like so much about Apex's economy is that it is in very large part structured around loot boxes. Yes, you can buy some skins directly, even though they are in my opinion ridiculously overpriced. $18 on average for a single legendary weapon or character skin, which to me is absolutely insane. But other items, such as certain ultra-rare heirloom items, are only available in loot boxes. However, the point of this video is not to debate whether loot boxes should exist in free-to-play games, or whether the skins are overpriced. The point here is to look at one single aspect of loot boxes, the surprise mechanics versus gambling aspect. Now EA took a lot of flack last year when they claimed loot boxes to be surprise mechanics akin to Kinder Eggs or Pokemon cards, and a large part of their defense of loot crates, certainly on a political or legislative level, seems to be to feign ignorance of, or simply outright deny, the existence of any similarities between the way a player psychologically responds to loot boxes and the way a player psychologically responds to slot machines, scratch cards, and many other commonly known forms of gambling. So to counter EA's ridiculous denials about blatant and open manipulation of gambling psychology to entice people into spending more money than they are comfortable spending in in-game economies, I would like to submit the following clip as Exhibit A. Now the first couple of times I saw this thing or this phenomenon, I thought it was just my imagination. Then I realised I definitely was seeing what I thought I was seeing, and finally I actually had the presence of mind to record a few crate openings until it happened and I got documented proof. Now just for the 2 or 3 people out there who are maybe not familiar with loot systems, Apex uses a system which is similar to many loot-based games nowadays. You have 4 basic tiers of loot, or quality of loot. You have your common, your rare, your epic, and your legendary. These are colour-coded white, blue, purple, and yellow/gold respectively. In Apex you do also have a 5th tier, which are the rare heirloom items. These are very rare, and each character only has like one of them. Common and rare items are basically trash though. They're stocking fillers that nobody cares about. You can tell this literally how they've been made. In Apex, the common and rare items are simply texture swaps that take 5 or 10 minutes for an artist to make. The only interesting items are really the epic and the legendaries. Legendary is what players really want, but epic are still more or less counted as a win. Without being as flashy as the legendary items, epic items are still way better than the base common or rare items. If you were to compare it to like a $1 scratch card, a pack with only common and rare is basically a loss. One epic item is basically breaking even or a win up to maybe $7 or $8 depending on the exact item, and one legendary item is like a $20 payout on a $1 scratch card. Now obviously you can also have combinations in a box that contains like a legendary and an epic item or whatever, and very rarely you may get an heirloom item, which is kind of like the super special jackpot, I guess. Now I'm not saying the probabilities are the same in Apex with the scratch cards, but a sense of what one has lost or won is roughly the same, and the win-lose payout is actually fairly similar to what I was saying there. You know, a legendary skin is actually close to $20, and normally an epic skin will come in at sort of like, $7-ish kind of price. Apex's loot box page gives the probability of getting certain drops as follows. A rare item has a 100% chance of dropping. That means you will always get at least one rare item, usually with 2 commons aside. After that you have the epic items, which is about a 1 in 4 chance, and then you have the legendary items, which seem to be about a 1 in 13 chances. Now, you can see from these odds that really it's only the epic and legendary items are the ones that are actually counted as winning boxes. If you get common and rare items, you've basically lost. Yeah, you're getting some stuff, but nobody cares about this stuff. And as a result, the majority of loot boxes do only contain a mix of common and rare items. So let's look at me opening a loot box which gave me this most probable outcome, i.e. 2 commons and a rare, and see if we cannot notice something a little bit odd that seems out of place during the opening animation. Did you catch it? Let's watch it again, but this time slowed down a little. I imagine that most people got it that time, but let's look one last time, slowing it down even more and then freeze framing it. And there you have it. A loot box which gave me only common and rare items is flashing the colour purple at me like I was about to receive an epic item. Now, one thing you can be 100% sure about in video games is if something happens, then it's because somebody expressly programmed it that way with specific intention. Sure, games have bugs, but they don't manifest in this way. This has been something that has been specifically and intentionally programmed into the game. And it doesn't happen every time. It happens on every nth loot box. I'm not sure of the exact frequency. I would say somewhere between 4 and 10 packs opened that contain only common and rare. So why? Why does this happen? Well, I imagine the response to this should be pretty obvious to most people. It's a technique designed explicitly to keep players on the hook. This tiny flash communicates almost subliminally to the player that they almost won that time, and if it comes after a number of crates opened without a win, this reinforces the idea that now they are on the cusp of a win, that the next one will be the charm. Everybody knows rationally that gambling is a non-winnable game. No for-profit company can possibly run a business where they have to pay out more in prizes than they take in wages. So a number of techniques are used to keep players engaged and keep them always pushing for that next win. Although the financial aspect of this isn't quite the same with loot boxes and the prizes don't strictly have a monetary value, video game companies still use loot boxes because they see it as a way to effectively get more money from people than simply selling them things directly. Ultimately, a player will spend more trying to get a desired item from a loot box than they would through simple direct purchases. For many players, spending $18 on a legendary skin is still a lot, but spending $10 on loot boxes, which may give you a legendary as well as a bunch of other crap, seems like a better investment choice, even though in the long run it isn't. With gambling, you have things like the sunk cost fallacy, and the belief that each time you play you're increasing your chances of winning. In other words, if you've already had 5 failed attempts, your chances of winning on the 6th attempt are higher. Although actually the odds never really change. If you roll a dice 5 times without getting the number 6, you do not have a 100% chance of getting it on the next roll. The probability is still 1 in 6. However, people who are gambling will often, in inverted commas, reason things in this way, and giving a player the right positive reinforcement at the right moment increases the likelihood that they will play again. That's why it's not used every time you open a loot crate, but only occasionally, and seemingly after a number of losses. If you saw this every time you opened a crate only containing common or rare items, it would fast lose its impact and meaning, but the fact it is used sporadically massively increases its effectiveness. In my opinion, this improves conclusively that not only do game companies, and in this case Surprise Mechanics EA, know damn well that these systems are akin to gambling, but they are consciously and actively using techniques to encourage and exploit gambling psychology. I would love to see it if someone could access the lines of codes which control how and when this little thing flashes purple. If it were completely random chance, then it would be harder to prove intent, but if it's more controlled than that, if for example it cannot possibly happen on the next 5 crates following a win, or cannot happen before at least 4 losing crates have been opened, there you would have the kind of specificity I believe conclusively proves knowledge of and complicity in the exploitation of gambling psychology in games. I would like to add as a footnote, I'm not criticising Respawn for this. I imagine they have little choice in the matter. I know that some Apex fans came down on Respawn after the first event when they added the Bloodhound Axe heirloom and you had the $7 loot crates which guaranteed one epic or legendary item. With 24 crates to open, it was $168 to get all the event items, plus another $35 to get the Bloodhound heirloom axe on top of that, giving a grand total of $203 for everything. Now, a lot of people said this was Respawn's choice and they did this rather than fixing bugs and tackling cheaters, but I feel this assessment is a little unfair. I wouldn't be surprised to learn that EA dictate a lot of how the monetization and microtransactions work in Apex, even going so far as setting prices and probabilities. Hell, I wouldn't even be that surprised to learn that EA sent a kind of monetization guidelines document to Respawn, where techniques like this were explicitly outlined and explained. I bet there are some very juicy documents floating around on EA's servers. And even if EA are not dictating Apex's microtransactions implementation quite that literally, you can still be 100% sure they have given Respawn expected targets for revenues along with a list of strong recommendations and suggestions of how to achieve them. It seems that to begin with, EA left Respawn with very few resources to support Apex Legends. Apex was after all nothing more than a stocking filler to EA. They had little interest in a free-to-play game until it became a massive success. It does seem like the Apex team were given more resources to work with in the latter half of 2019, as updates and new content seem to be more forthcoming, but I still doubt they really had the resources they need to develop the game on all fronts and not just to add new cosmetic content. With BioWare screwing the pooch too hard and Battlefield losing its way again, Respawn are EA's darlings at the moment, but everyone knows what happens with EA's subsidiary companies who cannot deliver. They go the same way as Visceral and all the other companies EA has swallowed and shut out. Even though Respawn are not threatened with this themselves today, I believe you'd be naive to think that this isn't a constant worry and concern at the company. As far as I'm concerned, it's EA who are 100% responsible for this predatory implementation of loot boxes in Apex Legends, and until proof of the contrary, I see Respawn as little more than victims of EA's machine, just like their customers. Anyway, that's all folks, I really just wanted to point out this little thing, because although it may seem small and insignificant, it really proves pretty conclusively for me that EA understand exactly what is going on with loot boxes and are actively exploiting the psychological mechanisms of gambling for financial gain, and should prove to politicians and legislators that their "we don't know what you're talking about, these are just harmless fun surprise mechanics" excuse is complete and utter bullshit.